The Bering Strait, also once known as the Beringia prehistoric land bridge during the Ice Age. It is the channel that connects the Arctic and North Pacific Oceans and has been a significant passage for human migration and cultural exchange. At just over 55 miles or approximately 88 kilometers at its narrowest point, this seemingly modest distance separates two continents and marks the meeting point of the Chukchi and Bering Seas. Imagine a bridge stretching across the icy waters of the Bering Strait, connecting the United States to Russia. Traversing from Alaska to Siberia, you could drive from New York to Tokyo or take a train from Seattle to Shanghai. Sounds like something a bit far-fetched, right? But this is not by any means a new idea. Did you know there are already 3 bridges in Asia longer than 55 miles? Yet no bridge links these two massive continents. So why is there still no bridge between the USA and Russia? And will you ever cruise across the Bering Strait in your Tesla truck or your Chinese BYD electric sedan? Well, let's find out. The Bering Strait, named after Russian explorer Vitus Bering, is the chilly gateway separating North America from Asia. At its narrowest between Alaska's Seward Peninsula and Russia's Chukotka Peninsula, it's just 55 miles or 88 kilometers across. That's shorter than the distance between Los Angeles and San Diego. Smack in the middle are the Diomede Islands, 2 tiny specks of land 2.4 miles apart. One owned by the USA and the other owned by Russia. These islands are so close you could almost throw a snowball across the international date line. Big Diomede in Russia and Little Diomede in the US, both sitting in the Bering Strait and weirdly separating mainland America from Russia. This narrow gap, known as the International Date Line, means that despite their proximity, the islands are in different countries and time zones, a huge 24 hours apart. The Bering Strait's harsh freezing temperatures and shifting sea ice make this closeness even more surreal, when in winter an ice bridge is formed, making it possible to cross the border by land. Little Diomede is home to one of the most isolated towns in the USA called Diomede. Home to only 82 people, while peering across to an uninhabited Big Diomede, which is a Russian military outpost. During the Cold War, this gap symbolized a location of major tension. The Bering Strait's waters average about 164 feet deep, shallower than your average ocean trench. And on a clear day, you can even spot Siberia from Alaska's shore. So why hasn't anyone slapped a bridge across this gap to connect the 330 million people in the USA with Asia's 4.7 billion people? As the stakes are so huge, think about the global trade potential, the coming together or shifting in world power, and the possible crossing of cultural lineage. But something's holding it back. So let's unpack this icy puzzle. The Bering Strait has the potential to be a global trade superhighway, but without a bridge, it will fail. So, has a bridge ever existed there before? Historically, the Bering Strait was a land bridge during the last ice age, known as Beringia. It formed around 35,700 years ago and facilitated the migration of humans, plants, and animals between Asia and North America. This land bridge, now submerged, underscores the region's role in human history. Indigenous peoples, including the Yupik, Inuit, and Chukchi, have long inhabited the area, relying on the strait for hunting, fishing, and cultural exchange, with linguistic and cultural ties across the border. The strait was named after Vitus Bering following his 1728 expedition, and it remains a point of interest for explorers, with notable crossings including Captain Max Gottschalk's 1913 dog-sled journey and also Lynn Cox's 1987 swim, which symbolized the easing of US and USSR tensions. These crossings highlight the strait's challenging yet navigable nature under specific conditions. The Bering Strait is also one of the key Arctic shipping routes, connecting the Pacific and Arctic Oceans, with around 500 ships passing through annually. These are massive tankers and cargo vessels hauling oil, gas, and goods between Asia, North America, and Europe. A single tanker can carry up to 2 million barrels of oil. That's 84 million gallons. Which is the equivalent of 127 Olympic-sized swimming pools holding 660,000 gallons each, or enough to fill around 5.6 million car gas tanks, which is a small city worth of vehicles. Ports like Nome in Alaska and Providencia in Russia are cashing in, with plans to expand if the Arctic ice ever melted. So, if this strait is such a big deal, why hasn't anyone built a bridge to make it an even bigger deal? Let's take a step back in time where things get interesting. The idea of connecting the USA and Asia isn't new. Since the 19th century, dreamers have pitched a bridge, or tunnel, across the Bering Strait. Back in the 1800s, American visionary William Gilpin dreamed up the Cosmopolitan Railway, a global rail network crossing the Bering Strait to link the North American and Asian continents. Fast forward to 1958, engineer Tung Yen Lin pitched the Intercontinental Peace Bridge, a bold plan for a 55-mile bridge with 3-mile-long spans. Lin's 1958 proposal focused on fostering commerce and building understanding between the USA and Soviet Union. He later formed a nonprofit in 1968 to push the idea, which was seen as a peace symbol and a chance to transform global trade. Russia again supported the idea in 2007, and the Chinese tabled proposals in 2014. Their wild ideas were to build a 55-mile megastructure linking Alaska to Siberia, with railways, roads, and even pipelines for oil and internet cables. And the estimated cost? A cool $50 to $100 billion. Yet nothing has translated into any concrete action, both figuratively and literally. And here's another problem. The USA and Russia aren't exactly besties. Geopolitical tensions, similar to Cold War vibes, modern sanctions, and Arctic resource rivalries, make cooperation trickier than a polar bear on ice skates. Research suggests the Bering Strait could become a significant trade route in the future, making it a viable shortcut for Asia-American trade and potentially reducing transit times compared to traditional routes like the Suez Canal. Plus, who's paying the bill? The US and Russia would need to split costs or beg for investors like China, which could stir up even more drama. And let's not forget, Alaska and Siberia are pretty empty. With fewer than 50,000 people in Russia's Chukotka and sparse Alaskan towns, the economic payoff for a bridge is, well, questionable. So what about a tunnel instead? Well, enter the man himself, Elon Musk, and one of his wild ideas. His Boring Company is digging tunnels under Los Angeles and Vegas for Teslas to zip through like Mario Kart. Now imagine a transatlantic tunnel from New York to London, traveling 60 minutes coast to coast with no planes needed. Well, apparently this far-fetched idea is something on his to-do list. But Musk's not pitching a Bering Strait tunnel just yet. Although a 2007 Russian proposal by Vladimir Yakunin, called the TKM World Link, envisioned a 60-mile rail tunnel under the strait, costing $65 billion. The catch? The seafloor is a nightmare. Hard rock, permafrost, and seismic faults make drilling tougher than convincing your grandma to use TikTok. Surveys in 2011 and 2021 suggested a route from Nome to Providenia, but political spats and costs are keeping it on ice. Other proposals include a 200-kilometer underwater tunnel considered by China, aiming to create a China-Russia-Canada-America railroad. These highly ambitious projects could transform the strait into a transportation hub. And while current infrastructure remains underdeveloped, I'd never bet against the Russian bear, the Chinese tiger, and the American bald eagle coming together to make one of the world's most insane infrastructures. Although, with current political turmoil, don't hold your breath too much. Let's put this into perspective with a couple of comparisons. The Oresund Bridge, the second longest bridge in Europe, a marvel of modern engineering. It is a critical infrastructure connecting Malmö, Sweden, to Copenhagen, Denmark, across the Oresund Strait. The construction took approximately 5 years, from 1995 to 1999, with the total cost of the Oresund fixed link, including the bridge, tunnel, and associated land connections, being approximately 30.1 billion Danish kroner, or about 4.3 billion US dollars at the time. Despite there being environmental challenges to overcome, the Paperholm ecosystem was initially planted with minimal grasses and has become a sanctuary for over 500 plant species, rare green toads, and birds. And a structure like this definitely doesn't come without engineering challenges. The bridge's height had to balance a shipping clearance of 57 meters. Ships also had to avoid interference with Copenhagen's Kastrup Airport, which led to the Tunnel Island Bridge design. There were also 16 unexploded World War II bombs and an inadvertently skewed tunnel segment that delayed progress, but were ultimately resolved. You then have the Channel Tunnel, often called the Chunnel. It's a remarkable engineering feat beneath the English Channel, connecting Folkestone, England to Calais, France. The idea of a channel crossing dates back to 1802, when French engineer Albert Mathieu Favier proposed a tunnel with horse-drawn carriages and oil lamp ventilation. But it was 185 years later when construction would begin. The project took approximately 6 years to complete, from the start of tunneling in 1987 to the official opening in 1994. It required 11 tunnel boring machines, some of the largest ever used, to dig simultaneously from both sides. Tunneling through chalk marl was complex, requiring precise surveys to avoid faults and water ingress. Early in the project, water leaks posed risks, but these were mitigated with advanced sealing techniques. The tunnels had to align perfectly, and it was achieved when the two sides met in 1990, with only a 50-centimeter deviation. An incredible engineering feat. The 3 parallel tunnels are 50.5 kilometers, or 31.4 miles, long, with a portion of 37.9 kilometers, or 23.5 miles, underwater, making it one of the longest undersea tunnels in the world, with the deepest point being 75 meters below the seabed. For a cost of around £9.5 billion, or $15 billion at the time. You would have to say it was money well spent, with over 400 million passengers having used the tunnel since its opening. So bringing things back to our topic of connecting the United States and Russia, what does Mother Nature have to say about this idea of constructing a bridge between two global superpowers? The Bering Strait is home to some of the harshest weather conditions in the world and has a history of natural disasters that would make any sane engineer have second thoughts about constructing a bridge. If a bridge was built between Russia's Chukotka Peninsula and Alaska's Cape Prince of Wales, it would face significant environmental challenges. The strait is shallow, averaging 40 to 50 meters deep, but subject to extreme weather, unusual ice dynamics, and geological instability. The Bering Strait lies just south of the Arctic Circle, experiencing severe winters with high winds and temperatures dropping below -40 degrees Celsius or -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Construction windows would be limited to short periods. Structures will need to withstand intense horizontal wind forces and unpredictable storms, which could accelerate erosion and require specialized materials resistant to freezing and thawing cycles. Winter sea ice covers the strait, forming flows that flow southward at speeds up to 1 to 2 meters per second, exerting massive lateral pressure, potentially thousands of tons, on bridge piers. Spring breakups can cause ice jams piling up to 9 meters high, risking structural damage or blockages. Designs would need ice-breaking features like conical shields or aerodynamic shapes. The strait is also at the northern edge of the Pacific Ring of Fire, where the Pacific Plate subducts under the North American Plate, and hosting about 90% of global earthquakes from plate subduction. The 1964 Great Alaska Earthquake, measuring 9.2 on the Richter scale, epicentered in Prince William Sound, but shook the Bering area, causing ground fissures and infrastructure damage in western Alaska, with aftershocks persisting for months after. The 1964 earthquake also produced tsunamis up to 8 meters high, devastating Alaskan coastal villages and indirectly affecting Bering currents. The 1952 Severo-Kurilsk earthquake near Kamchatka caused tsunamis that reached eastern Russia and Alaska's Bering shores, killing over 2,300 people. Historical Holocene records show there were tsunamis in the southwestern Bering Sea from Aleutian volcanic landslides around 8,000 years ago. Overall, these factors make the project technically feasible, but environmentally daunting, with costs easily exceeding $100 billion when including rail and road extensions through remote, sensitive tundra. Construction proposals have emphasized mitigation, but the Arctic's fragility, together with geopolitical tensions, add layers of complexity to a project like this. So before we completely write off this idea, let's check out a few other phenomenal bridges that exist in Asia. 88 kilometers or 55 miles seems like a super long distance to build a bridge between the USA and Russia, doesn't it? However, did you know that the 2 longest bridges in the world are almost double that distance? The Danyang-Kunshan Grand Bridge in China is 164.8 kilometers or 102.4 miles. and the Changhua-Kaohsiung Viaduct in Taiwan is 157.3 kilometers, or 97.8 miles. Firstly, let's find out about the wonders of the Danyang-Kunshan Grand Bridge in China. Located in Jiangsu Province, China, connecting Shanghai and Nanjing along the Beijing-Shanghai high-speed railway. The construction duration took approximately 4 years, cost roughly $8.5 billion, and was built by 10,000 workers. It was primarily constructed using pre-stressed concrete for the viaduct structure, and over 450,000 tons of steel was used for structural components. The 9-kilometer section over Yangcheng Lake required 2,000 support pillars to handle the soft soil and water crossing. Some other significant and interesting facts: it reduced travel time between Beijing and Shanghai from 18 hours to under 5 hours. It is engineered and built to withstand earthquakes of up to 8 magnitude on the Richter scale, to cope with extreme typhoons and handle the impact from naval vessels of up to 300,000 tons. It stimulates connectivity in the economically vital Yangtze River Delta, supporting industries in manufacturing and agriculture like rice, hemp, tea, and cotton. Secondly, we have the Changhua-Kaohsiung Viaduct in Taiwan, connecting Baguashan in Changhua County to Zuoying in Kaohsiung, and is part of the Taiwan high-speed rail network. The construction took approximately 4 to 5 years to complete. It was constructed using precast concrete segments to ensure structural integrity and earthquake resilience. It's designed with flexible joints and materials to absorb and dissipate seismic energy, which is critical due to Taiwan's location near tectonic plate boundaries. With proven effective features allowing trains to stop safely during seismic events and limiting damage to specific areas for easier repairs. It greatly reduced travel times across Taiwan, stimulating economic development in less accessible regions. It was the longest bridge in the world until 2010, and in its first 5 years of operation, it safely transported over 200 million passengers. So do these extreme engineering feats make a bridge from the USA to Russia a viable option? Well, let's see what else there is to consider. Have you ever looked at the fauna and flora, together with the traditions and characteristics of ancient tribes, and wondered if there are more similarities between the USA, Russia, and Asia than we may have previously considered? Well, the Bering Strait's formation tells a story. About 20,000 years ago during the Ice Age, a land bridge called Beringia connected Alaska and Siberia, letting ancient humans and animals stroll across. Then, around 11,000 years ago, rising seas flooded it, creating the strait as we know it today. The Beringia land bridge was not a narrow crossing, but a massive expanse up to 1,000 kilometers wide, or 620 miles, and covering about 1.6 million square kilometers, or 620,000 square miles, which is roughly the size of British Columbia and Alberta combined. It emerged multiple times over the last 2.5 million years in the Pleistocene Ice Age, and appeared during glacial periods when sea levels fell more than 50 meters below current levels. During the last glacial period, approximately 125,000 to 14,500 years ago, there is evidence of a seaway existing, a land bridge, intermittent connections, and a continuous bridge from around 30,000 to 11,000 years ago. Beringia was part of the larger Mammoth Steppe, a cold, dry grassland ecosystem stretching from Spain across Eurasia to North America. It was insulated from full glaciation by light snowfall and received moisture from the Pacific Ocean. The region acted as an ecological refugium with a mosaic of steppe tundra vegetation, shrub tundra patches, and isolated forests of larch, spruce, birch, and alder. The environment supported a rich array of Ice Age megafauna, including woolly mammoths, woolly rhinos, saiga antelopes, cabalid horses, steppe bison, and gray wolves, which experienced a population bottleneck around 25,000 years ago before repopulating from Beringia. It suggested that Paleolithic hunter-gatherers from eastern Siberia crossed into North America during the last glacial maximum, likely crossing in small groups of a few thousand while following megafauna across the exposed land. This migration is thought to have occurred between 17,000 and 12,000 years ago, populating the Americas as descendants spread southward. Evidence includes archaeological sites showing human presence in eastern Beringia coexisting with megafauna for millennia. Overall, Beringia was a dynamic, life-sustaining lost world that bridged continents, facilitating one of humanity's great migrations and shaping the biodiversity of the Americas. Maybe current enemies like the USA and Russia and the USA and China can realize they are more connected than they ever thought. And perhaps this sort of understanding can contribute to softening the current geopolitical tensions and increase the hope for a more prosperous future, as Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are now on speaking terms. Is this our opportunity to put differences aside for the greatest engineering feat ever to be built? And will they want to be known as the men that not only brought peace and prevented World War III, but also connected the USA with Russia and opened up economic corridors that were once far-fetched ideas and dreams? Imagine having that opportunity as two world leaders and not capitalizing on it. Will the Diomede Islands, splitting the strait, stay as a microcosm of tension? Remembering that back in 1867, Russia sold Alaska to the US for $7.2 million. Pennies for a gold mine, but leaving behind a messy border dispute. Both sides want control of Arctic resources like oil and gas, making cooperation on a bridge about as likely as a sunny day in Siberia. The Bering Strait's strategic spot makes it a geopolitical chessboard. Russia and the USA have been flexing muscles here since the Cold War, with Russia claiming most of the strait's waters and the US pushing for international access. Today, Russia has militarized Big Diomede, while the US bolsters Alaskan defenses. It's like the Strait of Gibraltar's Spain-Morocco feud, but colder. China is also sniffing around, eyeing Arctic trade routes as part of its Belt and Road initiative. A bridge could be a game changer, linking North America's rail networks to Russia's Trans-Siberian Railway and China's high-speed trains. But with tensions high in Ukraine, US and EU sanctions, and Arctic oil grabs, building it would be like convincing a grizzly bear to share its salmon. As we finish off exploring this idea, we need to decide if this is a fairy tale or something within reach and quite possibly world-changing. A cocktail of geopolitical grudges, sky-high costs, earthquake-prone geology, and a shipping lane too valuable to mess with. A bridge or tunnel could transform global trade, cutting shipping times from 20 days to 5, slashing costs by 5 to 15%, and linking 4.7 billion Asians to 330 million Americans. But until the US, Russia, and China play nice and someone cracks the code on building in an Arctic earthquake zone, we're stuck crossing by boat. Will we ever drive from Alaska to Asia? Maybe one day. But for now, the Bering Strait's keeping its secrets frozen. So tell us your thoughts on how this might play out. A realistic idea, or will it remain one of life's mysteries? We hope you enjoyed this dive into fascinating constructions and geopolitics, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Please also consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference and means the world to us. Thanks again, stay curious, and we'll see you next time on Earth Mapped Out.